In military aviation, numbers rarely tell the whole story. A country can have hundreds of aircraft on paper and still be completely unable to defend its own skies. That is exactly what happened to Iran in the summer of 2025, when Israeli jets flew unopposed over Tehran, striking air bases, nuclear facilities, and military infrastructure across the country, while the Iranian Air Force, one of the largest in the Middle East on paper, sat grounded on the tarmac. Not a single Iranian fighter jet is confirmed to have taken off in response. What we are looking at today is the full inventory of that Air Force. Every fixed-wing aircraft, every helicopter, every platform that makes up one of the most unusual military aviation collections in the world. A fleet frozen in time by revolution and sanctions, kept alive by improvisation, reverse engineering, and sheer institutional stubbornness. From American interceptors acquired under the Shah to Iranian-built gunships assembled from cannibalized parts, this is the complete picture of what Iran actually flies and what it all means. AIR superiority fighters, America's legacy and Russia's answer. We start with the core of Iran's aerial combat power, the air superiority fighters, and the most famous aircraft in the entire Iranian inventory is one that was never supposed to end up in enemy hands. The Grumman F-14A Tomcat. Iran signed the purchase agreement in 1974, during the era of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, when Washington considered Tehran a crucial bulwark against Soviet expansion in the Middle East. Deliveries began in February 1976, and 79 of the original 80 ordered aircraft were handed over before the Islamic Revolution of 1979 changed everything. The United States immediately cut off spare parts, technical support, and any further cooperation. The F-14 fleet began a slow and painful decline. By early 2024, the IISS estimated that no more than 10 remained in any operational condition, with the vast majority cannibalized, to keep a small number airworthy for quick reaction alert duties over Tehran. Iran did manage to upgrade at least 2 to the locally designated F-14AM modernized standard, integrating domestic avionics, a new radar warning receiver, and the Fakur 90, an Iranian reverse-engineered version of the AIM-54 Phoenix missile. Then came June 2025. On the 16th, IDF drone strikes destroyed 2 non-operational F-14s parked in the open at Mehrabad Airport. On the 21st, 3 more were confirmed destroyed in central Iran. By March 2026, strikes on the 8th Tactical Air Base in Isfahan had effectively eliminated what remained. The world's last operational F-14S, a distinction Iran had held for 2 decades after the U.S. Navy retired the type in 2006, were gone. The next aircraft in this category is the Mikoyan MiG-29, the Soviet replacement that never quite replaced enough. After the revolution severed the American supply line, Iran needed a modern fighter it could actually sustain. The answer came from Moscow in 1991, when Iran received 24 MiG-29 9.12B fighters and 6 MiG-29UB two-seat trainers. It was the most capable aircraft Iran had acquired in over a decade, and it filled a genuine air superiority gap. Over the following years, without consistent Russian technical support, the fleet degraded. Some airframes were overhauled domestically and cleared to carry the Nasser-1 anti-ship missile, adapting a pure air superiority platform for maritime strike duties in the Gulf. By 2025, the operational status of the MiG-29 fleet was deeply uncertain. Supplementary fighters, the American hand-me-downs, and the copies of copies. Moving now to Iran's Supplementary Fighter Force, the aircraft that fill the gaps. We begin with one of the oldest platforms still in Iranian service, the McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom II. Iran originally received 225 of these aircraft between 1968 and 1977 across the F-4D, F-4E, and RF-4E reconnaissance variants. They flew thousands of sorties during the brutal Iran-Iraq War of the 1980s. As of mid-2025, approximately 60 remained, with surviving F-4Es undergoing radar upgrades using Chinese systems and integration of indigenous precision-guided munitions. A fleet that entered service under one geopolitical order and has somehow survived into a completely different world. Next in the supplementary force is the Northrop F-5 Tiger II. Of the 181 originally delivered beginning in 1974, roughly 50 remain airworthy. The F-5 is in many ways the backbone of Iran's domestic aviation ambitions, because its simple airframe became the template for everything Iran tried to build on its own afterward. Then comes the Chengdu J-7, a Chinese-built derivative of the Soviet MiG-21, which entered Iranian service in 1991 with 24 aircraft across the N and MB variants, and the Dassault Mirage F-1, which arrived in Iran in one of the stranger episodes of the Cold War. Iran never purchased these aircraft from France. Instead, 23 Mirage F-1EQ and F-1BQ fighters were flown to Iran by Iraqi pilots seeking refuge during the 1991 Gulf War and were subsequently absorbed into Iranian service without a single franc ever changing hands. Alongside these, Iran also inherited a number of Sukhoi Su-22 fighter strike jets from the same Iraqi exodus, aircraft that largely disappeared from public reporting but reappeared in the headlines in 2026 when U.S. and Israeli strikes destroyed at least 2 of them on the ground at Shiraz. Now the aircraft that Iran built from the bones of what it already had. The Hessa Azaraksh, meaning lightning, was Iran's first declared indigenous fighter, introduced in the mid-1990s, and it was essentially a rebuilt F-5 airframe dressed up in domestic branding, a stepping stone more than a weapon. The Hessa Sayke, which followed, is more visually distinctive, featuring outward canted twin vertical tails that give it an immediately recognizable silhouette. Approximately 12 aircraft exist. Iran claims significantly enhanced avionics and weapons capability. Outside analysts remain skeptical about the extent of the upgrades. And finally, in this category, the Hessa Kausar, unveiled in 2019 and described by Iranian state media as a 4th-generation multi-role fighter. Outside observers consider it another modified F-5 variant, with production numbers that remain very small. Ground attack, the strike platforms. Turning now to ground attack, Iran's dedicated strike capability rests almost entirely on one aircraft: the Sukhoi Su-24 Mk Fencer. Iran operates approximately 24 to 30, combining 12 delivered directly from Russia in 1991, with 24 additional Iraqi aircraft that defected during the Gulf War. The Su-24 is Iran's only dedicated long-range strike platform, with a combat radius sufficient to reach targets throughout the Persian Gulf region. Iran has also tested domestically produced anti-radar smart missiles carried by this platform, one of the more credible indigenous weapons integration efforts in the IRIAF inventory. The IRGC Air Force, a parallel military in the air, a part of Iranian air power that deserves separate attention, is the force that operates outside the regular Air Force entirely. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Air Force. It functions as a distinct branch, equipped primarily for close air support of IRGC ground units, and it fields aircraft types that rarely appear in standard IRIAF inventories. The IRGC operates approximately 10 Sukhoi Su-25 Frogfoot ground attack jets, a Soviet-designed armored close air support aircraft battle-proven in Afghanistan, giving the IRGC a dedicated low-level strike capability independent of the regular Air Force command structure. Alongside the Su-25, the IRGC additionally operates approximately 40 Embraer EMB-312 Tucano turboprop attack planes, a Brazilian-designed aircraft used globally as both a trainer and light counterinsurgency platform, and one of the more unusual foreign acquisitions in the entire Iranian military aviation inventory. Reconnaissance and Special Mission, the Eyes and the Ghosts, moving to reconnaissance and special mission aircraft. Iran operates 3 Lockheed P-3F Orion maritime patrol aircraft, acquired in 1974, used for long-range ocean surveillance and anti-submarine operations. Given how degraded the rest of the fleet has become, these 3 aircraft are arguably among the most strategically valuable platforms Iran still operates, because they provide coverage no other type in the inventory can replicate. The McDonnell Douglas RF-4E, the dedicated reconnaissance variant of the Phantom II, held an extraordinary distinction in recent years. It was the last RF-4E in active military service anywhere in the world, a title the IRIAF carried into 2025 before losing 1 airframe in January of that year. And perhaps the strangest entry in this category is a converted Boeing 747, which has been modified for the electronic warfare role, making it one of the most unusual airborne electronic warfare platforms currently operated by any air force on the planet. Then, there is the HESA Iran 140, a joint Iranian and Ukrainian development intended to serve in transport and maritime patrol roles. 7 aircraft were produced before the program stalled around 2015, a casualty of shifting political relationships and the broader dysfunction that sanctions impose on every Iranian procurement effort. Tankers, the fuel that extends the reach. The tanker force is small but strategically critical. Iran converted Boeing 707-368C aircraft into KC-707 aerial refueling tankers, a modification that extended the operational range of the MiG-29 fleet and gave Iran a meaningful power projection capability it would not otherwise have. On June 15, 2025, one of these KC-707s was destroyed on the ground at Mashhad Airport by Israeli strikes, a single loss that the IDF described as eliminating Iran's sole operable aerial tanker. Alongside the 707 conversions, Iran also modified 2 Boeing 747s into KC-747 heavy tankers, providing refueling capacity for its larger combat aircraft, representing a Cold War-era capability sustained entirely through domestic engineering and determination. Transports, the backbone that nobody talks about. The transport fleet is the part of the Iranian Air Force that rarely makes headlines, but it holds the entire logistics structure together. Iran's 12 Ilyushin IL-76 heavy airlifters form the backbone of strategic military logistics, providing cargo capacity that no domestic or Western aircraft in the Iranian inventory can match. The Lockheed C-130 Hercules, with 27 aircraft across C-130E and H variants, is the workhorse of tactical airlift. Though satellite imagery of Mehrabad Air Base has shown a number of airframes with engines missing, a visible and sobering indicator of the cannibalization that keeps others flying. The Fokker F-27. Friendship has been in Iranian service since 1972, with 12 aircraft performing the unusual dual role of troop and cargo transport alongside target towing duties for air defense training. Iran also operates 15 Pilatus PC-6 porters, Swiss-built utility transports, whose short takeoff and landing capability makes them essential for operations from unprepared airstrips across Iran's mountainous and desert terrain. For executive transport, the inventory includes 3 Dassault Falcon 20s, 1 Dassault Falcon 50, 2 Lockheed Jetstar 8s, and a small number of Boeing 737 variants used for VIP and senior official movement. The civilian face of a military machine struggling to remain relevant. Trainers. Building the next generation on what remains now the training fleet, which tells its own story about how Iran prepares its pilots. The newest foreign aircraft in the entire IRIAF inventory arrived not through a traditional arms deal, but as a direct consequence of the war in Ukraine. The Yakovlev Yak-130 advanced jet trainer. Russia delivered the first 2 aircraft in September 2023, with additional examples following, in an exchange that reflected how dramatically the geopolitical landscape had shifted. Iran had supplied Russia with Shahed 136 loitering munitions, and Russia reciprocated with the most capable trainer platform Iran had seen in decades. The Pilatus PC-7 turbo trainer operates in the largest numbers of any trainer type in the fleet, with 45 aircraft bridging the gap between basic propeller instruction and jet-powered advanced training. The Beechcraft Bonanza F-33, with 28 aircraft in service, is one of the more unusual entries in any military training fleet. Originally a civilian design adapted for basic airmanship development, because the embargo left Iran with few other options. The PSC MFY-17 Mushak, a Pakistani license-built version of a Swedish design, operates in significant numbers, with 25 aircraft providing primary pilot training, illustrating how sanctions have pushed Iran toward non-Western partners that Western governments cannot easily pressure. Then come the domestically produced trainers. The Hessa Yasin, also referred to as the Kausar 88, uses 2 7,000-pound turbojet engines and is claimed by Iran to be comparable in performance to the Russian MiG-IT. One crashed in 2024. The Hissa Simorgh is Iran's conversion of the F-5A to 2-seat standard, with 9 aircraft converted internally by Iranian technicians without any foreign assistance. The Chengdu FT-7, the dual-seat conversion of the J-7 fighter, serves as the high-performance lead-in trainer for Iranian pilots transitioning to frontline interceptors, with 14 aircraft in current records. The Hessa Dorna, also known as the Fajr 3, exists in only 2 airframes and represents Iran's attempt to produce a fully indigenous jet trainer from scratch, rather than converting a foreign design. And finally, the Hessa Adora, currently a single prototype that entered development in 2016, and the IRAF Pars 214, a basic trainer that operated in moderate numbers, 12 aircraft as of 2005, providing a foundational platform for student pilots before they progressed to anything more demanding. Helicopters, the rotary force that fought a different war. We close with the helicopter fleet, which has a history unlike any other part of the Iranian military. Iran purchased 202 Bell AH-1J International Super Cobra attack helicopters between 1975 and 1979, 62 of them TOW-capable. And when Iraq invaded in September 1980, these helicopters became the first line of defense. Iranian AH-1J pilots achieved a documented 10-to-1 kill ratio over Iraqi helicopter crews. They scored 3 confirmed air-to-air kills against Iraqi MiG-21s using their 20mm cannon. the only confirmed fixed-wing kills by a helicopter in the history of modern warfare. After the war, with spare parts unavailable, Iran reverse-engineered the AH-1J into the Panha-Tufan configuration, adding domestic avionics, composite rotor blades, night vision compatibility, and Iranian-made Tau missiles. Around 50 remain operational. June 18, 2025. 8 of them were destroyed on the ground at Kermanshah by Israeli strikes in a single day. The Bell 214 Isfahan, with 287 examples ordered before 1979, was the medium transport backbone of the pre-revolutionary fleet, and Iran subsequently reverse-engineered it into the Shabaviz 275, which entered domestic serial production in the 1990s. A 2024 Flight Global report confirmed at least 24 Bell 214s still operating. Alongside these, the Augusta Bell 205A Iroquois, the Italian-licensed version of the UH-1 Huey, entered Iranian Army service in 1971 and remains one of the most numerous rotary-wing types in the force, with approximately 68 surviving examples. Iran also operates the Augusta Bell 206 Jet Ranger in the light utility and training roles, with approximately 20 aircraft in Air Force service, Italian license-built versions of an American design that have been in continuous Iranian service since 1971. Then there is the Mi-17, the one significant post-revolution rotary wing acquisition from Russia, with at least 20 examples received between 2000 and 2006 alongside Mi-171 transport variants and Mi-17B5 medical helicopters. The Hessa Shahed 285 is Iran's domestically developed light attack helicopter, unveiled in May 2009, based on a heavily redesigned Bell 206 airframe and reconfigured as a single-seat gunship capable of carrying rockets, cannons, and anti-armor missiles. At least 7 were documented in service by 2012, and carrying the entire heavy lift responsibility for the Iranian military is the Boeing CH-47C Chinook, with 20 to 30 examples remaining from pre-revolutionary procurement, the largest rotary wing platforms in the inventory, performing the kind of heavy equipment and mass troop movement that no Iranian-built helicopter can come close to replicating. And that is the full picture. 40 distinct aircraft types, spanning 6 decades of aviation history, representing the industrial output of at least 8 different countries, held together by a military-industrial complex that has had to become expert in doing the impossible with almost nothing. Iran launched over 550 ballistic missiles and more than 1,000 drones at Israel during the June 2025 12-day war, demonstrating real capacity for asymmetric warfare. But its Air Force, the conventional force, the one built by a Shah who imagined Iran as a regional superpower with American standard air power, offered no resistance at all. What you have seen today is not just a list of aircraft. It is the archaeology of a military that stopped evolving the moment the revolution came, and has been living in that frozen moment ever since.